Have you ever wondered how people build these amazing mountains with seemingly no effort? Well, me too, but here's how I do it. I'm here in my Wizard of Oz world because this world has a lot of mountains, and I'm going to show you today, we're using World Edit, how to make this kind of mountain that's over my right shoulder. But I'm also going to give a few other examples just so that you can... Sorry, there's my cat. Just so that you can find your own personal style with World Edit. Now, with World Edit, what you want to do, if you haven't done this already, /wand, and that gives you the wooden axe. Now, for this specific kind of mountain, you probably won't need this, but obviously it's a World Edit basic, and this just lets you do that, and then if you want to replace stuff, there you go. Now let's start with the base of the mountain. What you need to do is get a tool. I think most items in the game work, but I usually just use a shovel because I know what I'm doing and I know that it's going to work. Type //br or brush, sphere, and then use any non-gravity block. I use birch planks because I typically don't use birch planks in my builds, and also I'm usually building on grass so I can see exactly where I'm putting this. And then set your brush size. You can go up to 6, and I usually just put it at 6 if I know that I'm building a big mountain. And now with this, you can make, it is a sphere, but obviously because I've clicked the ground it goes down, and that is why you want a non-gravity block for this brush. With this brush, what you're going to do is just basically lay out a little foundation. I say little, it can be as big as you want or as small as you want. It's kind of just a base so that when you place a gravity block on it, it doesn't fall through the floor, especially if you're on a flat world, because it will literally just open up into the void. Now, with this brush, you're going to use a gravity block. I personally use sand because it's very similar in colour to the birch planks, but obviously any gravity block works. And then if you see, that goes through to the void. That's why you put the birch planks there, or any non-gravity block. Now, the reason you use a gravity block for this part is so that you can actually give it like a foundation or a structure. Obviously, if you want to do like a bit that's open, use a non-gravity block for that bit and then use gravity blocks over the top of it. I prefer to use gravity blocks because it generally is the easiest way to make sure that your mountain is thicker at the bottom and thinner at the top, which, just broadly speaking, is most likely what you want for a partially natural looking mountain. With this mountain, you need to make sure that some bits are different heights, like you've got a few bits sticking up and stuff, otherwise you just have basically one big rock sitting there. Obviously the shape is completely up to you, but if you are going for the natural look, peaks are definitely the way to go. Also, layer behind mountains if you can. Now, if you want, you can use a smoothing brush to kind of smooth out these mountains, but obviously if you have a gravity block, it's kind of already done for you. I personally don't really like the smoothing thing, but I'm going to show you anyway. So if you do //br or brush, smooth, and then the brush size that you want. Annoyingly, sometimes this does raise the ground, which is kind of why I don't really like it. It also kind of makes it too blocky for me, but that is just down to personal preference. Now on to painting. What you want to do is type //GMask and then whatever your gravity block is, or whatever your predominant block in this mountain that you have now is. This GMask or global mask basically makes it so that only those blocks are affected. With your brush tool or a different brush tool, whatever you want, type //br or brush, splatter, and then your chosen block that you want to paint with. Now, if you want to paint with more than one block, you actually can do that. You can set percentages so that you can have 50% one block, 50% the other, and obviously it's just kind of randomly assigned. Or you can have 33, 33, and 33, or you can have 20, 30, and 50. With the splatter, you can't kind of just set the brush size. You can set the brush size and the decay. Now, the decay is basically how much it actually tapers and how much it is a splatter rather than just a straight circle. That number is completely up to you. I typically go 2 or 3 because my brush size with a splatter stays relatively small at a 3 or maybe a 4. I typically start with mainly just stone. all over for this specific mountain, I mean. And I'll do stone and mossy cobblestone, but I'll get more mossy towards the top because I know that for this one, I'm gonna put moss at the top. I'll change my brush throughout this process just to make sure that I can actually get the exact painting that I want. And I usually, to set the moss, I will use the wooden axe to set the area and then set the moss that way rather than painting the moss, because it's a lot more efficient and it also makes sure that I don't miss any spots. And then because those mountains kind of look a little bit plain with just the stone and the mossy cobblestone, I personally like to set the global mask to stone and then set a really small brush on the splatter and use deep slate. I go kind of in the cracks, in the bits that I want to be shadowy, and then keeping the global mask stone, I will use tuff just to, again, just taper it out a little bit more just to make it blend a lot nicer. And this is so effective. I really love doing this. I think it really makes the build just so much better. And of course, you don't specifically have to use the blocks that I'm using. The principle is make the darker areas a darker block. If you want to clear the global mask, just type //GMask and press enter, and then it will get rid of the global mask. Now, I think that mountains just kind of plopped on the terrain just look a bit rubbish, but obviously that is very build dependent. So what I personally like to do is blend the mountains to the terrain. And how I do that is sometimes I bring the terrain, you know, the base floor block up into the first few blocks of the mountain at the bottom, or I set the global mask to grass or whatever the block at the bottom is, and I use a splatter brush with quite a high decay to use the blocks that I've used in the mountain on the floor just to kind of blend it a little bit more. Now with this mountain, instead of painting everything stone, I wanted to try a different way of painting. So I went straight in with the deep slate. I did the deep slate at the bottom, and then I did tuff above that, again with a splatter, and I did go a bit back over that deep slate because I used a sphere brush, not a splatter. And then I went over the top with moss, and then I used the axe or the wand to then just replace all the remaining blocks with stone. And obviously because there were 2 blocks in the foundation of the mountain, meaning the birch planks and the sand, if you have any birch planks showing, or literally if you have any blocks of that first block that are showing, set your global mask to that and paint over it, or do //replace. Literally just don't have that showing unless it actually does blend into your mountain. If you would like to unbind your brush, you can do //br or brush. You can either do none or unbind, and that basically means that now this is just an iron shovel. There's nothing special about it, no brush, so no accidental misclicks. Now I wanted to show you these mountains here, because most of these mountains were not built using gravity blocks first. With these mountains, I went immediately in with a brush that was all of these different blocks combined. There was also some gravel in there, but I took it out because it was just too noisy. Obviously, I'm still working on this, or subject to change. This was the splatter. This was kind of before I'd really got the hang of like global masks and everything. Basically, my point is you can make some very cool structures. You see there's like a little bit of a cave when you don't go straight in with a gravity block. And it's so cool. Obviously you can use a mix, just make sure that you do end up replacing all the blocks that you want to. Don't forget to do the backs of your mountains, or this will happen, unless obviously you don't need them showing. I wanted to show you this mountain here, this bit, not this bit or that bit, but this stony, mossy bit. That took me about 3 minutes altogether from start to finish. I really like these mountains because they're a lot more rocky than those ones, because if you see, there's moss pretty much all over, bad example, but there's moss all over the tops, whereas these ones have some more stone and andesite mixed into them, which I think looks really cool. I think it looks really nice. It just looks like such a stony, rocky, hilly mountain. I am aware that this mountain style isn't necessarily realistic in like a realism sense, but honestly, I love it. I love it so much more than just regular Minecraft hills. I wanted to show you this example from a different world. How I made this was I did the birch planks all along the bottom, and then I did a thing like that, like a little circle, and then I put the sand over the top, and that's how we got these really smooth faces, which I think smooth faces on a mountain looks very good if you're going to put lots of blocks over it. This example I wanted to show you not only for the shape, but also because it has some modded blocks. See, dragon terracotta, you've got terracotta bricks, you've got mycelium tuff. This is a potential mountain idea for my colourful SMP world, or series, which I think you should definitely go and watch. That's the base, but that's all you're getting because there are spoilers. If you see here, it's just very slightly blended. Now, it doesn't need much, but just sitting there, just with this harsh contrast, it just looks so wrong. But adding this, it really makes such a big difference. What I do also want to say is, if you see these blocks, they're all kind of similar, right? Not necessarily in hue, but you know, you can understand how this goes from the mud to the blue terracotta to the purple terracotta, although it looks very pink, to the mycelium. Like, it makes sense because the color scheme makes sense. You don't have to have your color scheme make sense. I think it definitely does help to have like a very good color palette that it works together. Now I'm going to show you what happens if I change the colors of this. So to do that, I am going to select this block here, and I'm going to select this block here because that has completely encased my mountain. Now what you want to do to replace blocks is type / replace the block you want to replace and then what you want to place it with. Oh my, can you see how much of a difference that makes though? I mean, I think personally the way to go is definitely the darker blocks on the bottom, but again, personal preference. Let's replace this mycelium turf with white wool. It looks snowy. This is very cool. See, it still doesn't necessarily look bad, it just kind of looks wrong. Whereas this, it works. It works as a believable part of a terrain if you had the rest of it like purpley. But also though, you'll see here, where this bit sticks out, there would be a shadow behind it, so there's a slightly darker block. Or in this case, if you don't really have a darker block than this is a bad example because this one actually is darker, so let's go here. Oh, so is that one. Either way, if you don't have a darker block to put in the shadows, you can use a noisier block, meaning this is a very smooth texture, this is a rather noisy texture, because the noise makes it look like it's darker. Those blue terracotta bricks blend almost perfectly into the mud. Even when you go close up, they're completely different. But far away, the shadow, it works so well. And like up here, the shadow, it works. Do you see that above me? Those were my first attempts at mountains in this world. Literally just flat things because I thought I could get away with it, but no. I'm so glad I learned world edit because this just looks so much better. I mean, with the waterfalls, oh my god, the possibilities are endless. I would absolutely love to see your versions of mountains using this tutorial, so definitely tag me on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. All my details will be in the description. Thank you very much for watching this episode. I hope you did learn something. And again, show me your creations. I want to see what you've made. I hope to see you in my next video. Goodbye.